Well, good morning, class. Here we are, Chapter 1, Introduction to Public Speaking. We're here. You made it. I'm excited to get started with you today, so we're going to dive right in to Chapter 1. Before we get started, though, just a quick Bible verse for us. The lips of the righteous feed many, but fools die for want of wisdom. And that's found in Proverbs 10:21. We have a really big responsibility for the things that come out of our mouth and the things that we say. So we want to take public speaking very seriously. We know it is a tool that we have been given to persuade, to inform, to get our thoughts and our points across to people we come in contact with. It's extremely important in the delivery of the gospel to lost people. So we need to keep this in mind, that the lips of the righteous feed many. Where are our lives? Where do we line up with the Scripture? So keep that in mind as we go. I want you to think of a speaker that you believe is a great communicator. You may have been at a conference, you may have been at summer camp, you may have been somewhere that someone was delivering a message. What characteristics highlight their ability? Was it their humor? Was it their delivery style? Was it their passion? I think you can kind of just take a moment and think about that person and think about why you liked their delivery so much. And think about how can you almost imitate those? How can you take those items and put it into your own public speaking? If they're good at humor, how can you be more humorous to gain your audience's attention? If they are just quick-witted, how does that work? But I bet you one of the things that all of you guys are thinking about right now is passion. When someone is passionate about what they're talking about, it makes it interesting to their audience. So what are you passionate about? We need to start thinking about those things as we have some projects coming up. What can make you a better speaker? What are you passionate about? There's a lot of benefits to this course, and we're going to go through some of them right now. The benefits of this course is, number one, it's going to give you skills for speaking in public. Okay, you're going to develop these skills when you speak to a public audience, and these skills are not just going to be limited to this class. They're not going to be limited at all. You're going to use them throughout your entire lifetime. So, yeah, you're going to learn some skills how to speak. Now, these skills are going to apply to a lot of different and various situations. One of the things that you're going to learn is how to do one-on-one communication. If you don't have a job right now, or when you graduate college, you're going to be getting a job, you need to know how to speak in job interviews. You know, it's important to how to project confidence in yourself, to project confidence in your abilities. And public speaking has a lot of that. You have to project confidence in what you're talking about. So that's going to help you in one-on-one communication. Another thing that it's going to help you with is that it's going to give you some skills that are prized in the job market. No matter what your major is right now in college, when you go to get a job in that degree field, whether that's nursing or teaching or whatever, they're going to want to know, can you communicate clearly? Can you take a concept and can you explain it to other coworkers? This is what people want. They want to know that you understand and that you can communicate well. This is how you're going to gain a job. This is how you're going to progress through the ranks of that job. Communication is the key. It doesn't matter what your desired profession is. Communication is going to help you excel through that. This course is also going to give you some experience. It's going to give you some self-confidence. Many of you guys are coming into this course and thinking, I am scared to death of public speaking. Well, guess what? This is a safe environment. You're going to be able to gain some experience. You're going to know what you're good at, what you're not good at. You're going to know where you need to work on some things and how to improve. And the more you do it, the more self-confident you become. Being able to speak self-confidently, that's going to increase your confidence as a person, but it's also going to increase your confidence as you speak to others. That's what it's all about. Another benefit of this course is you can begin making a contribution to others. There's some times in life, outside of work even, that you're going to be called upon to speak. Look at this guy here. He may be giving a public speech on the local animal shelter, about how to support local animals. He may be raising funds, who knows? But you can make a difference in your community just by having the ability to speak, to persuade, to inform. to come up with topics on the just off the cuff. You're going to be able to help others. So there are tons of benefits of this course. Now, one thing we need to do before we go any further is to understand how this whole speech communication process works. It's not really complicated, but we need to know how it works. So the first thing is you have to have a speaker. And I know for many of you that's a duh moment right now. All right, this is public speaking. You have to have a speaker. And in most of these cases, it's going to be you. So the speech communication process starts with a speaker. Then if someone's speaking, you have to have someone who is listening. And remember, this is a process here. So if I'm speaking, you're listening, that's part of the process. Then you've got to have a message, because no one speaks without having a message to get across to their listeners. So you have to have a speaker, you have to have a listener, you have to have a message. And this sounds really simple, but in real life, true communication does not always take place with these three components. Sometimes a speaker delivers a message, but listeners misinterpret it. When communication fails, it can be the fault of the speaker, it could be the fault of the listener, or honestly, it could be the fault of both parties. So communication has some breakdowns, and we're going to look at some different components here and think about how these take part in this process. Another part of the process is the channel. This is the fourth component. So you've got a listener, you've got a speaker, you've got your message, and then you have to do something important with that message. You have to send it as a speaker through a channel to your listener. Now, a channel is simply just the medium that is used to communicate your message. This channel could be just as simple as a public address system. It could be radio, it could be television, it could be YouTube, it could be whatever media that you desire it to be in. But when you give a speech in a classroom, you're just going to simply use your voice. If you're giving it to this classroom setting, you're going to be filming yourself, so that does have that added video element of a channel. But your primary channel is going to be auditory. It's going to be your voice. And the secondary channel is going to be the visual. Now, this is things like your gestures, your facial expressions, your visual aids. All these things come into play here. So, all right, so you've got a speaker. They come up with a message. They put it into the channel to get it to the listener. Now, the fifth process is feedback. And for this online class, this is a little different, because your feedback is going to come in the form of written statements, typed back statements from us. Maybe I will give you some auditory feedback. But in a real life public speaking situation, feedback can be in many different ways. It can be verbal, but it also can be basically a feedback is the response that the listener gives to the speaker. Now, this can be verbal, like if a student were to ask a question, but most of the time in public speaking situations, feedback is nonverbal. Look at this guy here in this picture, the face that he's making. What is this telling you? If you were the speaker, what is he telling you? Is he confused? Is he excited? Does he have a question that's brewing? There's all kind of things that are going on here in this photo that as speakers we have to interpret. Because if you're giving a speech and you are doing it effectively, you're reading your audience. You're reading the feedback from your audience. So as you film your projects, you will be required to have an audience sitting in front of you. It could be mom, grandma, best friend, your pastor. I don't know, whoever you want it to be. But you're going to have an audience. And as you speak, you have to read their feedback. It's going to be nonverbal most of the time. They're going to have puzzled looks, or they're going to give you the eyebrows up and shaking their head like they agree. These are all important feedbacks. It's valuable because it shows whether listeners are attentive, they're bored, confused, and whatever they give you, you have to start making adjustments. So feedback is extremely important. The sixth, and look at this guy in this photo, the sixth component of the communication process is simply known as interference. Now, this is anything that is going to block or hinder communication of a message. Things like falling asleep in a classroom obviously creates interference for the student who slumbers. But another example is things like crying babies. who make it hard for listeners to hear what the speaker is trying to say. Maybe the air conditioner is extremely loud. Maybe there's a train that goes by. There's all kinds of different interference. The seventh component of the speech communication process is this thing called the situation. Now, this is the context in which your speech is taking place. It's the time, the place in which communication occurs. Different situations call for different behaviors by both the speakers and the listeners. For example, if the situation is a church service on Sunday morning, the speaker would not play the role of a stand-up comedian, right? I mean, okay, a joke every once in a while is cool in a sermon, but you wouldn't just get up there consistently rolling off jokes. And the audience probably would not cheer and clap in a very, raucous manner for things that are being said. So just consider the situation as part of the speech communication process. So to give you visual learners out there an idea of what it looks like, the book shows us this graph. This is the speech communication process. Now look over here on the left. You see the speaker. Now the speaker is going to create their message and they're going to insert it into the channel. The message is carried across to the listener, but look at that lightning bolt. That's where the interference comes in. And this is where a lot of people misinterpret what speakers are trying to say, because this interference plays a big part in misinterpreting what the speaker's trying to say. So the speaker takes their message, they put it in the channel, it has to go through this interference, and then the listener interprets the message that the speaker is sending. The listener then sends feedback back to the speaker through a channel. It goes through the interference as well as the speaker receives it, and they have to interpret the feedback and adjust their speaking as they go. So the speech communication process is very important for you to understand, because everything that you do in this course is going to follow this model. You're going to come up with a message, you're going to choose your medium, well, it's kind of chosen for you during public speaking. However, you're going to send that message through, you're going to send your message through the channel. You're going to have listeners, they're listening, they're interpreting, they're sending you feedback. All the while, you need to be aware of the interference that can cause problems. So you're a speaker, right? You're the one going to be giving most of these speeches, and you have some responsibilities. So let's take a look at them right now. One of the main responsibilities that you have as a speaker is that you have to maintain your high ethical standards. You should never, and let me repeat, never distort information. Look at this lady here. To lose weight, eat candy. We all know that's not true, okay? And it doesn't matter if you're selling candy to raise money for a good cause. It's not okay to fudge the facts and claim that eating candy will somehow magically blunt one's appetite and cause weight loss. That's not going to happen. But some speakers believe that if they have a good cause or they're advocating for something good, it's okay to kind of bend the facts and manipulate these statistics. It's not okay. Ethical speakers strive to tell the truth at all times. So your job in this class is to never distort information. Maintain high ethical standards. Another thing that you're going to be responsible for is respecting your audience. Some speakers, let's just be honest, they have a condescending attitude toward their listeners because they consider them to be misinformed or ignorant of their topic. You should never talk down to an audience. Not even like this little girl here. Don't talk down to even an audience of small children. It doesn't mean you don't have to adjust your speaking and make things and chunk them into sections where those children can understand them, but you're not going to talk down to them. All audiences deserve to be treated with respect. I think we can all agree on that one. You also have this responsibility of rejecting stereotyping and scapegoating. Okay, this is still part of that high ethical standards. You have to avoid scapegoating. You have to avoid stereotyping. Now, a stereotype, and this is a good note for you to have, is an exaggerated or oversimplified image of a group of people. For example, look at this guy here. Some people think that heavily tattooed individuals are, I guess, more prone to criminal behavior. But that's just not true. Some of the greatest people that I know are filled with tattoos. And they're some of the nicest people. They hold themselves high in the community. They have high ethical standards. You can't stereotype people just because of tattoos. Think of this other thing, this thing called scapegoating. Scapegoating is one of these things that occurs when an individual or a group of people is somehow blamed for a real or even an imaginary problem. For example, think about this. In Adolf Hitler's Germany, Jews were blamed for economic hardships and other problems, but they weren't the cause of them. They were the scapegoat, and that furthered Hitler's agenda. So you have to quit stereotyping and don't scapegoat if you want to be a really good speaker in public speaking. Man, and look, we're not speaking just to hear our own voices in public speaking. We have some responsibilities to enrich our listeners' lives. Look, if you take this kind of thought process and you change it and flip it on its head, like you may be dreading public speaking, but instead of dreading your speech, why don't you welcome it as an opportunity to make contributions to your classroom, to your community, to your group of friends? Think about it. You go from dreading it and seeing it as an opportunity to help others. A speech can bring interesting information and valuable viewpoints to your listeners' lives that they didn't know before, and you can really make a difference to people. The last thing that we're going to talk about today is this. You have to take every speech seriously, even if only one listener shows up. No matter how small the audience is, give every speech your best effort. If one person shows up, you have a chance to make a difference in that one person's life. Take every speech seriously. So, let's take a quick look at what a speech is kind of consisting of, okay? This is a quick guide to public speaking. We're just going to kind of roll through it. We're going to break this down in the future, okay? So don't worry about it. You may want to copy these things down. You've got this on this lecture. But I want you to get this in front of you on the first day so that you know the format that we're going to be following for every one of our speeches here on out. The first thing is an attention getter. You've got to get your audience's attention. And this comes in the form of like a surprising statistic. Maybe it's a story of some sort. We humans love stories. It's something that's going to get your audience's attention. And then you go into your introduction. In public speaking, you should always preview your main points. Always, from the get-go. If you've got 3 points, we need to know them right from the beginning. You have to give your thesis for what you're talking about. And we always consider inserting transitions to get us from one point of our speech to the next. Think about it like writing a really thorough English paper. You always have to write an English paper with transitions, and we'll get into more of those, what they're going to be later. After your introduction, you roll into the body. You usually have 3 points. And remember, just like a good an essay that you're writing, every point has to have subpoints, right? So if you have point 1, you have to have at least 2 subpoints to back it up. So you'll have 2, 3 points, whatever you need with their subpoints, transitions between each one, and then the conclusion. In the conclusion of every speech you're going to give this semester, you need to review your main points. And then you need to answer these 3 questions. What, so what, and now what? And we'll get into more of that a little bit later. But hey, we're going to cut it off for now for your first lecture. I hope you have taken the time to read the text. Don't forget to answer the discussion board questions, and we will see you next time.